Big thanks to everyone on Patreon who makes this possible. First of all, more ways for us to connect in the backcountry. Iridium announced something new called NTN Direct, which is kind of like Iridium's take on Starlink's Direct-to-Cell. Not exactly the same, but same idea. It uses standard 5G chips, phones to talk to the Iridium satellites, which cover 100% of the globe in low Earth orbit, which is a pretty cool thing. They announced they're doing a trial with Deutsche Telekom in early 2026. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that coming out on phones or devices here in the United States soon after that. Hopefully, it's a little bit easier to connect to NTN Direct than it is to use the Phoenix 8 Pro geostationary satellites. If you didn't see my review, check that out. You have to do the old twisty-wristy to make that thing happen. I also want to mention this service from Iridium. It's a little bit older. It came out last year. It's called the Iridium Satellite Time and Location System. It's basically an alternative to GPS. If you're ever wondering, like you see GPS is jammed in Ukraine and Syria, different places. Well, this is a private version of GPS that Iridium does. Obviously, it covers not only 100% of the globe like the Iridium satellites and inReach does, but according to the spec sheet here, it's 1,000% stronger than regular GPS, the signal, and it can even penetrate indoors. And it's also resistant to jamming. There's some kind of a checksum or authentication there. So I thought that was cool. It would be cool to see a new device, maybe from Garmin, that has the inReach NTN and the positioning system on there. Why not? Who knows what the details are behind the scene, but something like that could definitely be pretty cool. And I wouldn't be surprised if Starlink already has something like this Iridium GPS system, probably for the military, probably something they're not talking about, just guessing there, but that's my guess. The T-Mobile satellite data has gone live on October 1st. I have some reviews coming soon. You can now use the CalTopo app over that and do live tracking over it. So basically like the breadcrumb trail that you can do in a Garmin inReach, you can do with CalTopo on the T-Mobile satellite data, which is a pretty cool thing. I know they opened up their system to other developers. They actually mentioned it in their keynote address. I did talk to some other developers outside of the big ones like AllTrails to see if they're going to be using the T-Mobile satellite, and they said they never heard back from T-Mobile, so maybe that was just a show. But I did use T-Mobile data all the way up Mount Whitney, and it worked like a charm. It worked really well. Burned the battery down quite a bit, but it did work. And two friends of the show, Lance and Robin, hiked Mount Whitney a week or so ago, and the plan was for us to try a video call from the summit of Mount Whitney. It didn't quite work out. They had less luck with their connection. They were able to message back and forth, but not to do the video call. But evidently, I have heard of people doing it. If you've done it, let me know in the comments, and I'm definitely going to be trying it out as well. You do that in WhatsApp. There's a neat new service called Backcountry Brain. It's kind of like a search engine for the backcountry that you can use with an inReach device. It should give you responses back in under 160 characters. You can do things like ask for the weather, news, and I'll put a link to this and everything else I talk about underneath the video so you can check it out yourself. Along the same lines, Go's Health, I did a review on that app. It's basically like a backcountry interactive health app. If you get in trouble, if you're sick or whatever, get bit by a snake. Anyway, they have a new ChatGPT integration, and you can tell it what you're going to do, and it will give you this neat little readout of all the risks and what to watch out for on your trip. All right, let's talk about the government shutdown, because politics and the government is always fun. The parks are open, national forests are open. Many of the areas are unstaffed or understaffed, and if you're going to a park, there's no fee to get in, so the toll booths are generally not open. Permitting offices are closed. So if you want to get a backcountry permit, you probably can't do that. Recreation.gov is up, but you're not able to book all the sites. It's on a site-by-site basis. And there is a good Reddit post that shows all of the places that are closed. I'll put a link to that under this video as well. So if you're planning to go, definitely check that, because the parks are also not updating their websites with any alerts. So that's a big red flag. If you don't want to get in trouble, you're not going to get any information from the park. So definitely check the trip reports before you go. Also, facilities are not being maintained or maintained as much, so bring your own toilet paper. And to get back to the whole permitting thing, I've heard from a lot of people that Half Dome is just insane, sort of like pre-permit levels, because people are just going that. No one's checking for a permit, and there's like a line of people to get up there. There's also been some other kind of crazier things, like somebody did a base jump off of, I think, El Capitan and Yosemite, which I believe is illegal. That's going on. There's a lot of confusion. That's the general tone that I'm getting. People don't know what's open, what's closed. Some places, visitor centers are open. Bookstore staff, there's like a bookstore connected. The bookstore staff are actually keeping the visitor centers open so you can go and look at interpretive displays or whatever, but I don't know what type of information you're going to get there. The Forest Service, they're cutting down or eliminating any prescribed burns, which are like preventative burns for forest fires. Also, visitor centers and areas that were maintained before are closed. The Forest Service websites also have this big political message plastered on the top. This is on some other government websites as well. Grand Canyon, there's been some interesting things, alternatives rim to rim, extended closures, maybe some things opening sooner than we thought. Instead of me doing this, I invited Brian from the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show podcast. If you haven't checked it out, check it out if you love the Grand Canyon, want to know more about it and hiking there. But I'm going to turn it over to Brian to give you an update here.
Yeah, Chris, the hits just kind of keep on coming at the Grand Canyon in what is already one of the most disruptive years in the history of the Grand Canyon, at least the recorded history that we know of. Already you had the Trans-Canyon Waterline Project, which was disrupting trails and hiking in the canyon. And that was before the big North Rim fire, the Dragon Bravo fire that covered 145,000 acres and burned down the Grand Canyon Lodge, much of the infrastructure on the North Rim, and a whole lot of land. Fortunately, the North Rim is reopening in places. They did say that it was going to be closed in the immediate aftermath of when the fire began. They said it was going to be closed for the rest of the season, but they've changed their mind, probably under a lot of pressure from local businesses like Jacob Lake and the Kaibab Lodge, and for the people in Fredonia who rely on North Rim traffic in one of the most remote places in the United States. So that is good news. There are some trails that are open in the areas that did not burn around Point Imperial and around Cape Royal. You can't get below the rim. The North Kaibab Trail, the iconic North Kaibab Trail, will remain closed for the foreseeable future, unfortunately, which cuts off any ability to do the iconic rim-to-rim hike. But the South Rim is no stranger to this either. It's being affected as well. The River Trail, which has been closed for months now, which connects Bright Angel and South Kaibab, the two main corridor trails on the South Rim, and lets you do the traditional rim-to-river hike. That trail has been closed because of the Trans-Canyon Waterline Project. It was supposed to reopen on November 1st, but we just found out this week that that trail has suffered some significant damage, apparently a rock slide, and now it is going to be closed, most likely for the remainder of this year and sometime into next year. So there will be no traditional South Kaibab, Phantom Ranch, Bright Angel, rim to river available until at least next year. And a lot of people miss that. You can't access the Silver Bridge. That's closed as well. So the disruptions continue on the south side. The good news on the South Rim, though, is that some things are about to return to normal. Phantom Ranch at the bottom of the canyon is going to reopen apparently on November 1st. They seem very confident in that. It has been closed since mid-July because of smoke and the damage to the North Kaibab Trail due to the Dragon Bravo fire. So Phantom Ranch, Bright Angel Campground down there will be reopening, so that is good news. So you will be able to access those areas again via South Kaibab, because South Kaibab, the 6.5-mile trail to the bottom of the canyon that you can take if you don't want to take Bright Angel, which has better views, South Kaibab does, that has been closed below tip-off, which is 4.5 miles from the trailhead. That has been closed since July as well. So you have not been able to access the river from South Kaibab since July. That is going to change on November 1st as well. So at least you've got the opportunity to do a big day hike all the way down South Kaibab to Phantom Ranch. And they're going to open North Kaibab now to the Ribbon Falls Junction. So that'll get about another 6.5 miles outside of Phantom Ranch where you can access the North Kaibab Trail. The rest of North Kaibab, like we mentioned, will remain closed for the foreseeable future, though, I'm hearing rumblings that the higher-ups in the park are really interested in getting that open as soon as possible, and that might mean sometime maybe next year. If that were to happen, it sounds impossible because of all the damage that was done to the upper 1.7 miles of the North Kaibab Trail. It sounds impossible, especially because of the risk of flash floods and rock slides and erosion based on the spring runoff in one of the snowiest places in the country. There's worry about that kind of trail damage, but what I'm hearing is they're talking about designating at least that part of North Kaibab, taking it away from the official corridor designation, which requires a lot of maintenance and something that the Park Service spends a lot of money on maintaining for the public's use, and changing that to a wilderness designation. I don't know the mechanics of that. I don't know if it's possible, but if they were able to do that, the wilderness-style trails, wilderness designation means essentially hike at your own risk. So if North Kaibab is good enough that it can be designated wilderness and signs are up and the warnings are there that, hey, if you're doing this, it's at your own risk, that will at least open things back up a lot sooner than we thought for rim-to-rim hiking, hopefully sometime next year. I have heard, though, that they are not going to do any work on Upper North Kaibab until next spring, because they just want to see what is going to happen with the rest of this year, if they get any more rains, if there's any flooding, and also next year with the runoff that we were just talking about, because that can do a lot of damage in normal years. But now with the burn scars and the unstable soil, there's the risk, obviously, of catastrophic damage on the upper reaches of North Kaibab. But we just don't know. The Park Service doesn't know, so they're not going to even start working and doing the extensive work that's going to be required to bring that thing back up to corridor trail status. We're not going to know that for a long time. But the wilderness idea, I like it. It's if that happens, I think that's going to be best case scenario stuff that we hadn't even thought about that would happen. It was, the thinking in the Grand Canyon hiking community is that rim to rim is not going to be an option for years. So to hear that there's a chance it could be next year, hey, we'll take any glimmer of hope that we can find. Another hike that a lot of people have been doing, because obviously so many folks were preparing for rim to rim, which is a bucket list kind of hike, 21 to 24 miles, a lot of elevation change. So people were training for that, and suddenly they couldn't do it. So what a lot of people are doing is they're still coming to the canyon, and because so many trails are closed on the south side as well, they're going down South Kaibab, across the Tonto Trail for 4.5 miles. So 4.5 miles down to tip-off, then 4.5 miles across the Tonto Trail, where you've got these incredible views, and you feel like you're kind of just standing alone in the middle of the Grand Canyon. Really feels isolated out there. That's 4.5 miles from tip-off to Havasupai Gardens. Then when you get to Havasupai Gardens, you got a choice to make. You're either 4.5 miles from the rim and being done, or what some people are doing to add mileage and add elevation and get to the river is they are hiking down from there, from the Tonto Junction at Havasupai Gardens, and taking that 3.2 mile hike down Bright Angel Trail to the River Rest House and Pipe Creek Beach, which is, of course, on the banks of the Colorado River. So if you do that, you're suddenly turning that into essentially a 20-plus mile day, which takes that pretty close to rim distance and difficulty. So a lot of people are doing that. I went up there last week, and Chris, I know you and I talked about this, having the mental fortitude to take that route from across Tonto and then get to Havasupai Gardens and turning downhill to go all the way to the river. I knew that was going to take a lot of mental fortitude, and I decided not to do it. I just didn't think it was worth it. So I just skedaddled straight up Bright Angel for a 14-mile day and another great day in the canyon. When I finished last week, I got to tell you, not all is bad in the canyon. When I finished last week, check this out. This is a scene I was greeted with on the South Rim. There was a group up there hiking for charity or some kind of cause, and they really had the spirit of the canyon with the cowbells and all that good stuff. That was super fun to see. So the spirit of the canyon is alive. It's a disruptive, strange year at the Grand Canyon, but hey, the South Rim is still open. There's still lots to do, so I hope people will still come and enjoy one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, and I can't wait to see you up there. I know that's going to be hopefully soon, and hopefully we'll be able to hike together one of these days, Chris.
Thank you, Brian, for that. That was super interesting. And thank you for sending the shirts over. If you've seen me wearing some Grand Canyon shirts in the latest videos, Brian sent them over to me, and he sells those on the site. If you'd like to get them, I will put a link to his podcast and where you can get the shirts and everything underneath this video as well. If you're going to Death Valley, just know that Tropical Storm Mario had wiped out some of the roads. I don't know how you're going to find out what the latest is, given the fact that there's no alerts posted to the website, but just a heads up there. And this is a weird one. In Arkansas, 2 fatal black bear attacks within like a month or so. It's the first time this happened in 130 years. If you're going out in bear country, it might make sense to get some bear spray. You just never know how they behave. Always check with the locals before you go there. Maybe call the ranger's office if they're there. You might be able to figure that out. And if you can't travel with bear spray or you don't want to buy it, you can rent it in a lot of places. There's a service called Bear Aware. I think they're at Yellowstone and Grand Teton. You can actually get them in the airport at Jackson Hole. So there are options. If you are in the Appalachians, I heard there is an invasive 4-inch Joro spider that is in the Great Smokies in the national park there. The Park Service is asking people to take pictures of it and post them on iNaturalist. They're not deadly or anything, but they are big. And if you watch my trail guide for Congaree National Park, I did see some of these huge spiders. I don't know if these are golden silk orb weavers or Joro spiders, but they're around there. So just a heads up. Also, some related news from the Smokies: a giant hellbender, which is the largest salamander. This thing is beautiful. Look at this, kind of crazy. But they found one dead, and they found it was from people stacking rocks up like in a stream, doing those rock things. So leave no trace. Don't do that, especially there. Be careful if you are in the streams or the water, because these things are in there. Hikers can once again summit the highest peak east of the Mississippi. Mount Mitchell State Park has reopened after Hurricane Helene forced its closure. If you want to hike Mount Mitchell, I have a guide for that on my website too. Really beautiful hike and a challenging hike for the East Coast. Earlier this year, I made a guide for a hike here in Southern California on the border of Mexico. I wanted to do it because there were rumblings that the border might be closed and may be made into a military base, which would prohibit hikers from going there and hiking because you'd be trespassing on a military base. Turns out that is coming true. Parts of Texas and New Mexico are now designated military bases, including the terminus of the Continental Divide Trail. And if you want to start at the CDT terminus there, you have to apply for a permit with the militaries, and if you are a non-U.S. citizen, you are not allowed to do it. It cuts off about 1.1 miles of the Continental Divide Trail at the border there. And I wouldn't be surprised if the PCT is next. That trail guide that I did was right by the PCT terminus in Campo. Sad news, this scumbag right here has murdered 2 teens that were camping at Mount Ord in Arizona. Really, really sad. I don't know what you do by something like this, but it's just heartbreaking and tragic. And also sad in the Phoenix area, we have another death, brings the total up to 4 heat deaths in the Phoenix area. And this latest body that was found in Phoenix was actually found in part by a drone. And I had mentioned drones and AI in my last news video. I think it was the last one. But the developer, or one of the developers who developed the software that uses AI to find missing people, using a drone, reached out to me. I have a link to the software below this. If you work on a search and rescue team and you want to, utilize the software, you certainly can. Their tip for me to you as a hiker was to wear bright colored clothes that contrast with the surroundings around you, and that will help the AI find you. I saw that there was snow in the Sierras, some other places, I think in Colorado too. You might have saw this. It was all over the news. Hundreds of hikers who had hiked to Everest Base Camp, and this is on the Chinese side, got caught in a freak early season blizzard and had to be rescued, not off of like Everest, but from the base camp. So you never know when things are going to happen. And that's a good segue. This is not sponsored, but I want to share with you something I learned about Overwatch and Rescue. That is the SOS subscription service, kind of like AAA for the outdoors. If you ever get charged for a rescue, if you're a subscriber for $80 a year, they'll pay your bills for whatever rescue it is, like an ambulance, that type of thing, helicopter. But I found out that you can, if you have a Garmin inReach, you can hit the SOS button on the inReach and still be covered by Overwatch and Rescue. What you should do is list Overwatch and Rescue as one of your emergency contacts. The SOS button will go to Garmin Response, but Overwatch and Rescue will be looped in. If for some reason you have to hit SOS and they're not looped in, you need to contact them within 96 hours and report the incident. And then if you get bills, you can forward them the bill. So that's an important clarification, just another reason for me to use a service like this. And they also put me in touch with a hiker named Ken who was hiking on the CDT, had gotten into trouble, had to call for help, and actually called the Overwatch and Rescue Response Center instead of the Garmin Response Center and got rescued that way. But I interviewed him, and here is his story.
All right. My name is Ken. Was hiking on the Continental Divide Trail. Started at Cumbres Pass, which is right near the New Mexico border, just north, and then was hiking north. And about 40 miles into the hike, I took a tumble on a very easy stretch of the trail. There was a lot of places where it would have fallen. It would have been a lot worse, but still above tree line, right at 12,000 feet. I don't know what happened. I just went off the trail. I think maybe a willow or something. I got stuck with my trekking pole or my foot, and I rolled side to side like little kids roll down a hill, not tumbling head over heels. Head stopped me on the way down on a spruce tree. So I got a really decent head and healed up pretty quickly. But I was worried about a concussion, of course. And my hiking partner suggested that we evacuate as well. She's a ex-NOLS instructor. I'm an outward bound instructor from years ago, obviously. So I didn't hit the SOS. I did through the contacts. I had Overwatch already loaded in there, hit that about 3 p.m. And I got a response from Overwatch at 3:03. So 3 minutes, which I thought was, going through satellite, obviously. So that was pretty excellent response time. And they just asked, they said, SOS received, what's the issue? I told them about head wound, possible concussion. Wasn't quite sure what to do. And my hiking partner, she thought we should get out. And she could evaluate me better than I could evaluate myself at that point. Neck was pretty sore and still is, actually. They asked me for updates a couple of times on my condition, to stay at our current location, not to move, what we were wearing so they could spot us. And we copy back. He helps on the way shortly. And the helicopter circled around and then kind of disappeared. We didn't know what happened to it, but it just landed further up the trail. So 2 rescuers came down, 2 search and rescue people came down. They took my pack with maybe a quarter mile to where the helicopter was. The helicopter, we were taking off around 5:30, so 2.5 hours after the initial SOS call. It was all good. They got us down to Pagosa Springs, got into the emergency room. They did CAT scans and x-rays and all that. So there was, some neck issues, but I'm being treated for those now. I guess the one thing I would say, knowing I had Overwatch kind of takes the expense issue off the table. So, and this was kind of a questionable whether it should go or not. So it just made it an easier decision knowing that I think Overwatch would have covered the cost of the helicopter if there was going to be a cost, if it was a private helicopter that took us out rather than, the local search and rescue team.
Thank you so much, Ken, for sharing your story. Thank you to Overwatch and Rescue for making that happen. And thank you to everyone who supports this channel, everyone on Patreon, Venmo, PayPal. I could not do it without your help. I would literally probably wouldn't be doing this news if you weren't here. So thank you so much for that. If you want to join me on Patreon, you can do it for free just to stay in the loop. There's all kinds of interesting things being shared in the chat. One of the things I found was interesting, Nate shared the fact that he had donated blood and then went to do a climb that wasn't super high altitude, but felt totally wrecked, and did a little bit of research. It turns out if you are going to donate blood, I guess it interferes with or reduces your capacity for your blood to absorb oxygen. Also, Doug emailed me, a longtime friend, and he is using a NordicTrack treadmill with a service called iFit. And this looks pretty cool. Basically, you can do virtual hikes on here, and the treadmill will adapt to the gradient as you go. I thought this was pretty cool. And I had him try Mount Whitney, and he said it was just all over the place. Some of the tracks, I guess, are more smooth than others. But still, he said a lot of the hikes work really well for him. And also, Susie emailed me, and she was looking to buy a cabin in the National Forest. If you've ever gone hiking, I've seen those cabins around. You can actually buy them or lease them. And she found a forum website where there are listings for those cabins for sale. So if you ever want to get one of those cabins, you can do it there. And again, links underneath the video. Some local news, Route 38 up by Big Bear has collapsed. So if you're going up to Big Bear area, make sure you check the Caltrans site and see if that is closed. Arsonist was sentenced to 16 years to life for starting the line fire. That was a fire. I mean, there's so many fires, but that was a fire a few years ago here in Southern California. And then they just arrested a guy for starting the Palisades fire. And they found when they were digging deeper, they found he was using ChatGPT to create images of, I guess, the Palisades burning and stuff. Kind of some sick stuff there. I saw this Instagram post. Evidently, there's some controversy around plans to build a $1 million bathroom at Runyon Canyon. There's all kinds of stuff in here. I'll give you a link to this so you can check it out for yourself. But it sounds pretty nice. $1 million bathroom. I'd probably go there just to use that. In my last news, I shared a video of a grizzly chasing mountain goats. Well, friend of the channel, Matt, sent me a video that he took when he encountered some mountain goats, I think up in the Olympics. And he had to move off the trail for them. There were babies there, but I thought it was kind of interesting. All right, guys, stay safe out there. It's turning into winter, and obviously things are changing. Enjoy the winter safely, responsibly, and I will have a lot more gear videos coming in the very near future, so stay tuned for that. All right, guys, I will see you out on the trails.